My name is Aaron Guy Leroux, and I'm a photojournalist and documentary photographer. How did fighting come to be? God, this was a nightmare. This is one of my worst days ever in Hong Kong. This is in July. I believe this was Bastille Day, July 14th, if I'm not mistaken. And I was in Sha Tin. And I'd gone out there to, it looked like there was going to be some kind of a confrontation that night. The protesters spent all day building up barricades in the streets around Sha Tin, and the police had been facing them down, and it looked like sooner or later they would clash. And oddly, it was kind of anticlimactic out in the street. There was a little tear gas, and the protesters, they'd spent 5-6 hours with a huge kind of supply chain they had built, like a bucket brigade, and they just abandoned all their supplies and their work, and the police kind of cleared the streets. And the police corralled the protesters deliberately into this mall, the New Park Mall, or is the Newtown? It's a Newtown Plaza, and it's like the New Park Mall or something in Sha Tin. And they corralled them in there on purpose. So they had blocked other egress points and funneled them into the mall, but no one thought anything of it because there's an MTR station in the mall. So like, oh, they're pushing everybody onto the train and they'll use the train to get them out of here. And it's like, okay. And so the mall is filled up in the center and 3 levels. In the top of the photo, you can see there's a huge square in the center that goes up 3 stories, and the mall was filled with thousands of protesters on all 3 levels. They were all around those railings, and they were all in the center here. It was just, everybody was in there. The whole protest had gone into the mall. And then the police came into the mall. A group of officers came into the mall, and from my vantage point, I was standing near the door that they came in. It was like 6 of them coming into the mall to confront, 8,000 or 9,000 protesters. And it was like, what the hell are you doing? And the second the protesters saw them, they went crazy, because at that time there was this kind of people had perceived it to be a law that it was against the rules for the police. It was against the law for them to come into a mall, and they broke that with impunity that night. They came in. The protesters went absolutely crazy and started throwing umbrellas at them and shouting at them. And it took like 5 minutes to get this group of like 6 or 8, maybe 10 police officers who were not dressed as riot police. They had shields and helmets, but, just pants and T-shirts on under that, not the heavy stuff that the guy in the photo is wearing. They finally drove them out the door reluctantly. And it was just like, what did you accomplish, or what did you think you were going to accomplish? Like, why was there any benefit to you and your small squad coming into this mall that you have filled with protesters? Well, it looked like, at the end of the day, when all other explanations have been exhausted, what remains was, it looked like they were deliberately trying to provoke the protesters, because the second they started throwing umbrellas at those guys, the riot police rolled in on cue with their shields and their helmets and their full body length shields, and they started pepper spraying everybody indiscriminately. They pepper sprayed each other. You know what I mean? It was madness, and the whole place broke into a riot. I mean, there were people attacking police officers attacking protesters, obviously beating journalists. pepper spray everywhere. The linoleum floor on the center of the mall became extremely slippery because of all the pepper spray. So, I had seen an officer, he fell and he twisted his knee. I think a police officer got his thumb bitten off, a part of his thumb bitten off this night. It was mayhem. I got one of the protesters threw a water bottle down into the center and it hit me in the head. Luckily, I was wearing a helmet that the protesters had given me that day, and it cracked the helmet and cut into my skull. I have a bunch of pictures from this night, and it was crazy. And everybody, people ended up fleeing. The police blocked the MTR station. They prevented people from getting on the MTR. So it's like they locked this entire protest into the mall in order to confront them. But they were spectacularly outnumbered. And it was just like, why are you picking a fight when there's no need? There's no reason. You could have just let the people funnel out peacefully and it all would have been over. No muss, no fuss, no tear gas, no pepper spray, no beatings. Instead, the police that night deliberately provoked the attack. They chose violence on purpose, and it was outrageous. A bunch of police got hurt. A bunch of citizens got hurt. Protesters got hurt. I mean, it was horrible. I mean, there was blood on the floor at the end of the confrontation. So this is just one shot from that night that kind of gives you a little bit of sense of the chaos, God, terrible. It was a terrible night.